Well, hello, everyone. I had a chance to really sit down with a few. I call them my family members. I had a chance to really sit down and dive deep into a conversation that I normally don't have with others, but I felt so comfortable, and I felt so at ease and so just overwhelmed with the joy and the love just to be in the company of such great leaders. Before I continue on, there's one of many people I would like to thank, and that's Mike. I remember the connection that I was connected with Mike through a mutual friend. And the first time I heard this man's voice, I looked at Terry, my partner, and I was like, this is an angel. And he only spoke a few words, but my heart was so connected to him, and my soul and my purpose was so connected, where I knew that whether he realized it or not, but he was going to be a big part of my life as far as being my mentor, being somebody I look up to. So Mike, thank you. And Judy, of course. I mean, oh my goodness, I can't tell her enough for how much I appreciate her and how much I love her. The conversation was so easy, and it just broke the ice in many, many ways. And thank you for affording me this opportunity. All right, now let's have some fun. Again, my name is Alphonso. I was raised right about 5 minutes from here in Milwaukee. But I came to Milwaukee when I was like 4 or 5 years old from Cleveland, Mississippi. My mother worked in the cotton fields. My grandmother worked in the cotton field. So education wasn't really something that I gravitated towards, because it was never promoted. It was never embedded in me to do so. But I knew one thing: I didn't want to follow in the steps of my grandparents by working in the cotton field. And so as a young age, my mother brought her kids to Milwaukee. So we came with Milwaukee with this new expectation, with this new hope of not only not seeing cotton fields, but have a better opportunity to create something for ourselves. But the one thing that I didn't realize at that particular time is that there was an identity crisis that I was going through, because I was born into a household where love was not plentiful. Accepting was not plentiful. So you had to figure out and discover who you are while trying to be a son, while trying to be a brother, while trying to take on these responsibilities that I had not been equipped to take on these things. So to fast track that, 1985, July, Milwaukee. I remember it was an early morning, 10:40 a.m. I had my 2-month-old daughter. She had brought so much of everything. She represents everything that was good, represented everything that was positive, because the same type of love that I was pouring into her, I didn't receive. So everything that I didn't receive, I was trying to pour it out in her. So I remember getting up this morning, anticipating my daughter coming to my house, my mother in the kitchen cooking bacon, playing the music. It was just a good morning. It was an average weekend. It was something that I looked forward to, because I knew that my family would gather around the table and we would talk, we would laugh, we would joke. I went on the porch with the plate of eggs and bacon, sat on the porch. It was a beautiful day, morning, 81 degrees, the birds was chirping. And for some reason, the area I was in, the sun had just paid closer attention upon our house. And as I sat on the porch, it's like our house just was illuminated with this joy, with this peace that I had never experienced before. But I had no idea that 5 minutes from that point where I was experiencing such joy and such peace, that when my life would be turned upside down. While I was sitting there enjoying the eggs and then waiting for my daughter to come, a police officer pulled up in front of my mother's house. And my mother sat on the porch next to me, and she said, "Alphonso, what is he doing?" I was like, "Well, I don't know. I'm just enjoying my eggs." So he pulled up and he raised down his window, and he's like, "Ma'am, who is that black boy that's sitting next to you?" And my mother said, "Why?" "That's my son, Alphonso. What did he do?" In return, he said, "Well, he's not in any trouble or anything. We just want to talk to him." So I went to the police car, not expecting anything, but trusting, believing that I was in capable hands, somebody that was a decision maker in my life. But I had no idea at that particular time how significant that thought was. So I went down to the police car, not really expecting anything, but just, how you doing? Okay, you may return. But instead, I was taken down to the Milwaukee Police Department, right down the street. And I remember going into, being driven in this car, and I looked back, and I saw my mother standing in the middle of the street, and I saw her fall down as though she was a crumbled rag or something. She fell in the middle of the street, and as I tried to look back, I saw my siblings coming to her to try to help her, to try to encourage her. But nothing would help her. But I had no idea that the further my mother had gotten from my physical presence, the more she wouldn't be there to protect me as she had always done. The further they pulled me or drove me away from her, the more lonely, the more lost, the more confused I came. So we came pull up in the police department, and I remember thinking, looking at a big word on the police door, and it says, I later found out that was homicide division. At that time, I had a third grade reading education. I couldn't read, I couldn't write. So I replaced those things with anger, with bitterness, with just shutting myself down because I didn't want my secret to be revealed to nobody. So I held on to it. 12 hours into the interrogation, they constantly came in and they offered me information. We know you're not the one, but we think you might know something. I didn't know the games. I didn't know the tactics. So all my clothes was removed from me, and I was told to stand up. And with a flashlight, I was told to stand and set my private part on the table. And with this flashlight, he was beating the table closer and closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. I felt the vibration shoot through my body as though somebody had punched me. I stood there, confused, angry, looking around, trying to find my protector, but she wasn't there. 12 hours into this interrogation, they said, your mother is in the lobby waiting for you. The only thing you have to do is sign this document and you can be released into her custody. I signed this paper. There was nothing on there. An hour later, it came back with some words on there that I couldn't read, and it said that I confessed to a murder. Fast track that. I was sent to the Children's Center in Milwaukee. I was waived until adult court. 4 months after that, I was sentenced to 105 years for a crime. So I remember sitting in front of the judge, and I remember the people walking in front of me. And I remember they pointed at me, and I'm looking at my lawyer, and I was like, who are they talking about? I never met these people a day in my life, but they confused me with somebody that did a horrible crime. But my lawyer looked at me, he gave me a blank stare. I was sentenced to the 105 years, and I remember being shackled. I remember headed to Green Bay Prison up north. And I remember looking out the window, and I began to notice the birds. I began to notice the trees. I began to notice that my freedom was slowly being pulled away from me. But it also reminded me when I woke up that Saturday morning and the birds was chirping and the sun beamed on our house and how joyous that was. But sitting on that bus, shackled up with the orange jumpsuit, my freedom taken, I had no idea what's going to happen to me. I thought that would be my last. So I entered into Green Bay Correctional Institution as an 18-year-old, confused, angry, young, uneducated boy. Had nobody to reach out to, nobody to converse with and tell them about the pain that I had experienced and that I'm going through. So I went to Green Bay not only angry, but I went there with a mission. And that mission was that I was going to devastate as many lives as I possibly can. If they say I was a killer, if they say I was a person that didn't deserve to be out in free society, then I would become the very thing that they said I was. And so it also stems back to when I was a kid. People used to always say, you'll never amount to anything. You won't be this, you won't be that, you can't do that. So it was easy for me to fall into the perception that other people had on me, especially the negative ones. So I began to prance around the prison as though I was a murderer. I hung with people that spoke like me, walked like me, and talked like me, and had no care in the world like me. I didn't care if I woke up the next morning. In my mind, I needed to get rid of the pain. I needed to get rid of who I had become. So I ended up going to the hole for 5 years. They gave me solitary confinement. And being in the hole for 5 years, that means that whenever you're fed, you have to crawl to the back of your cell. You have to cross your legs. You have to kneel down. You have to put your hands in the back of your back, and you have to lean forward. And I cried out every day, I'm innocent. I didn't do this. I'm innocent. Nobody listened. So one day, a chaplain was making his weekly rounds, and he came to my cell, and he went to every one of the cells as he normally does every week. But he represented everything that I distrust and I dislike and I hated. And so this human being would come to my door, and I would come up with ways in my head that I would devastate him, that he would not come to my cell again. Over and over he did, and he never accepted the warning. So one day I threw some urine on him. He didn't budge. He didn't spew any negative things. The only thing he said to me, Alphonso, I love you, and so do God. So time after time, I went through the same process where I threw urine on him. He reacted to me the very same. But there was this one particular time when I did it, and he began to look at me. He began to say, Alphonso, why are you so angry? Why are you doing this? I said, Chaplain, I'm in prison for something I didn't do, and I have 100 years. I can't write. I don't even know how to communicate with my mother. And he was the person that told me, I believe you. So eventually I described him as being the person that loved to hate away from me, because he began to build a relationship in the most darkest, troubling time of my life. He began to introduce me to a world of reading where he began to bring coloring books with photos. And I remember connecting the word cat with the photo, and I felt good. I felt as though I was being elevated from a place that I had been in captivity for so many years. And I realized that if I'm able to grab onto the words, if I'm able to hold on to it and to believe, there is nothing in this world that will be beyond my reach. So I dove into education, reading every book that he threw at me, because I knew that there was a purpose in my life that was much greater than the suffering that I was experiencing at that time. I told people then, every morning when I woke up, 32 years, this is how I determined, this is what I held on to, because it was truth. When I held on to this, and I began to share with people, the guards would walk past my cell and say, Mr. James, why are your linen folded? Why are your mattress folded? Because, sir, I'm going home. So they began to doubt that, to the point where they would put me in the hole, and it's like, well, I'm talking about escaping. No, sir. No, sir. You're going to be the one to open up the door. So I began to change the form of my thoughts. I began to enter inside of myself and see the inward child that needed to be discovered, needed to be heard. So at that moment, I began to believe not only in the possibility that humanity is able to come together and do great things, but I began to see that I was a part of that humanity that was meant to be great and do great. Prison became a mission field for me, where I saw men come back over and over, and I used to get so frustrated with them. Why are you returning back to community and all of a sudden come back to prison? What is the issue? And I started talking to men, mentoring men, educating them on how great you are, irregardless to what position you're in. I helped them with GEDs, I helped them with their HSEDs, but most important, I helped them to discover who they are. I don't know what happened from that point to when they was released, but I knew that when they opened the door, I knew what I was going to do. So I set the course where I'm going to start studying everything. I'm going to start studying business. I'm going to start studying economics. I'm going to start studying business. Because one day I'm going to be in a position where I'm able to reach back to the same community that not only rejected me, but they dispelled the truth. And so now when I return back to my community and they look at me, I don't want them to be ashamed. I want you to be encouraged and inspired, because now as a unit, we're about to do great things together. And life course began to move in ways that I had never imagined, but I envisioned it. It's been 7 years since my release. I know I'm missing a lot of parts, and I would be happy to share with you at a later time, but so 7 years, this is the 7th year. And I, for one, believe in purpose. I believe in prayer. And I believe in numbers. I remember I told Terry, I woke up, it was December the 30th, going into the new year. And I had this incredible dream where it was so real that I know I had to respond accordingly to it. And this dream consisted of me laying on my side as though I was a baby, as though I was a fetal with my hands and my feet that was bound. My mouth was gagged and I couldn't understand why. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. So I saw my soul removed from my body and I was able to look down and I saw the position of my body. And I tried to loosen myself, but I couldn't. I didn't have the strength nor the power to do so. And I remember waking up in the cold sweat and I told Terry, I got to go to the lake. And I drove to the lake and I saw the same spot that I saw in my dream that I laid in a fetal position bound. And when I began to walk out there, that's when it seemed like heaven began to open up. And that's when my mouth was ungagged. Because at that particular time, I hadn't suffered to the perfection of what I'm able to say to you today. There still was some things that I had to grow up. There still was some things that I had to experience in order for me to be in the position I am today. Character is so important when you're a leader. Love is so important when you're a leader. Forgiveness is so important when you're a leader. I remember just walking around Milwaukee and just feeling so sad for myself, and then 5 seconds later, I come across a person who has nothing. That reminds me, I'm supposed to do something. I'm supposed to do something. I can't just sit back and allow more 15-year-old boys, girls, kids get caught up in the system. I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm one of the blessed ones. Not many of them have stories like this. So that's why I'm positioning myself, willing to do whatever it takes to bring attention to what is going on, to bring love to what is going on, to bring freedom to what is going on. This leadership, I don't know if you really realize how incredible this really is. It opened up doors. It opened up avenues. It opened up opportunities. But it creates in you a sincere heart, a heart that needs to be heard, a heart that needs to be loved. So in closing, I remember reading years and years ago, it was this guy. He had a young son. And his father would wake up every morning. He would tell his son, I have this ugly boulder that is an eyesore in my front yard. And this particular guy, he was so meticulous about his lawn that he wanted to be the best of the best. He wanted to be the best on the block. He wanted his son to be, but there was this ugly, ugly stone that continued to be an eyesore in his yard. So he woke his son up one day. He told him, son, go out there and began to push against the boulder. And the son said, Dad, I'm too small. Why would I go out there and press against something that's 100 times my size? And the dad told him, just do what I say. Trust me. So over and over, the kid woke up early in the morning, went through the same process where he went out there and pressed the boulder, but he saw it wasn't doing anything. It didn't move. So time after time, day after day, moment after moment, he would get up and he would do that same routine over and over and over and over and over for 32 years. That boulder, that was the prison walls. That young kid, that was me. That voice, that was God. But the moral of this story is that God began to point out to the young boy. He said, look at your shoulders. The young boy looked at his shoulders and he saw the bulkiness, the strength Said, look at your thighs. And he saw that he was able to lift things that he had never been able to lift before. And then God set him down. And he told him, you did everything I told you. Your faith not only has increased who you are as a person, but it gave you the boldness to be able to conquer a boulder. The boulder was a prison. I overcame it. I overcame it with tears, determination, conviction, and love. So, thank you.